Well, in 2001, I went out to Sammie's Friends, which wasn't Sammie's Friends, it was the Nevada County Animal Shelter, to walk the dogs once a week, and I discovered that they were euthanizing 68% of the animals. And I thought, I mean, I didn't decide this on day one, but I thought after a few months, maybe I could do something about it. So I started a volunteer program, which is still in existence till today. And within, a few months, I had about 100 volunteers. So the dogs were getting walked and the cats were getting played with. Then, of course, the more people you have helping you, the more they talk to other people. And so animals started getting adopted and the euthanasia rate started going down. And we started, my husband drove 2 of them to Canada to give them a home. I put one on an airplane to Chicago. And we just started doing whatever we had to do to get them homes instead of having them euthanized. And in 2004, we said, well, the other reason besides being too many animals that animals die in shelters is that there's no money for medical care and they're sick or injured. So we started Sammie's Friends, and it's a 501c3, which is a nonprofit, and started raising funds and told the county, Nevada County, that rather than putting animals down when they were sick or injured, that we would pay for their medical care. And so we started that. And by 2006, the euthanasia rate was down to 2%. And that's 1,000 animals a month less were dying. And then in 2009, we wrote a proposal to the county to actually run the shelter. And that's what we've been doing ever since. I worked in the high-tech industry. I worked for Apple Computer, and I worked for Hewlett-Packard. And I didn't have any pets. I didn't think about having any pets. And then one day, somebody told me about these puppies, and I thought, well, I wasn't really thinking about adopting one, but one of them went home with me, and his name was Sammie. And then a lot of things changed. I left Silicon Valley and moved up here, but I still didn't move up here with the idea that I was going to start an animal organization. I mean, if somebody would have told me 20 years ago that I was going to do this, I would have said, no. I mean, that's as unlikely as I'm going to become a gold miner in Alaska or something. And it's named after my dog, Sammie. Sammie was a Shar-Pei. He's deceased now, but Sammie had a really good life. If somebody could do more for their dog than I did for him, I don't know what it would be. And so that was kind of my motivation to say, well, maybe I could help some other animals have a little bit better life. I probably can't give them all the life Sammie had, but I could improve their life. And so I did. But I didn't do it all by myself. I did it with lots of people helping me through volunteering, through donating money, through transporting animals, through donations of food and other things that animals need and use. And, over the years, I'm sure we've had, I don't even know, maybe 5,000 people help us. A lot of people. We run the animal shelter. There's Sammie's Friends itself, where we provide care for animals that are owned by people in the community and do spaying and neutering. And we also have a thrift store. So if we add all that together, we probably have about, 17 employees, with about 5 of them being full-time and everybody else is part-time. But then that's supplemented with probably 200 volunteers who they work different amounts, but I would say most volunteers work a couple hours a week. Yeah, so we really count on our volunteers, and we really count on, the community supports us in a lot of different ways through donations, and a lot of businesses sponsor things that we do, and they have contests that benefit us, and we just have a lot of help. I have a background in psychology and was trained to be a family therapist. And so I kind of look at things from a psychological perspective. So when I got my dog, I thought, I don't know what the psychological makeup of a dog is, but I'm sure it's different than a human. So if I'm going to live with this animal, I probably should learn something about how dogs see the world. So I started reading books, and about the first 5 books said, a Shar-Pei is not the right dog for a first-time dog owner. I thought, whoops, I have him, now what? So I thought, well, I guess I better get busy, and I better learn something, and I better get a dog trainer, and I better pay attention, and I'll figure this out. So I did. And Sammie was the dog trainer I got told me that, he said, I've probably trained 7,000 dogs and this is the most interesting dog I've ever met. He was very interesting. But he wasn't easy. You know, he kind of had a hard head. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. He wasn't motivated by the usual things that motivate dogs, like food and praise. He was like, you think I'm going to do that for that silly little piece of food? Or do you think I really care if you approve of what I'm doing or not? So I would have to figure out, so what would motivate him? So, you know, I learned that like squeaky toys motivated him. He liked the noises. But I'd have to get a new one pretty often because the sound would get familiar and then he wasn't motivated. But that would really motivate him. So I figured out a lot of things by working with him. And I guess, you know, I found the nature of dogs just as interesting as the nature of human beings. You know, we're all different. We all see the world differently. We all have different experiences. We have different backgrounds that lead us to, you know, why do we have different faiths, different political parties, different, you know, somebody becomes an engineer, somebody else becomes a ballerina. You know, why do we do those things? Because we're all different. Well, dogs and cats are all different too, and they have different things that interest them and motivate them. The animals that we get, I always say, are not people's pampered pooches and kitties, because if they're pampered pooches and kitties, they're home getting pampered with their families. They're not out on the streets and they're not being dumped. And, you know, we've gotten kittens that have been stuffed in other people's mailboxes. We've gotten bags, garbage bags of puppies sitting alongside the road. Just, I don't know, animals that have been just dumped places, and and we not only get cats and dogs, we also get like goats and horses, and I mean, how do you become a stray goat? But you do. and cattle, and I mean, we get a lot of, mostly what we get are cats and dogs, but we do get a lot of other animals too that are, you know, that you don't think of as going to the shelter, but we do. We have a dog right now that was horribly abused, horribly, and he's just the most sweetest, darlingest, funnest, liveliest dog. I think, gosh, if somebody beat me up over and over, I think I might have trouble being friendly and happy and joyous and free. I'd be scared, but he seems to be like, okay, that's done, now I'm a happy dog. I don't have to deal with that anymore. So animals can be amazingly resilient and just, I don't know, seem to get over things. But some of them also get, you know, psychologically damaged, and we have a behaviorist that works at our shelter that works with the dogs to try to help them that have behavior problems, and we have a kitty socializer that tries to help our kitties that are, you know, kitties tend to just be scared and hide, and you know, so he works with them and tries to get them to come out and you know, show the world that there's nothing to be afraid of. Well, there isn't anymore. You know, one of the sad things is that some of the animals we get, I think the best life they've ever had is at Sammie's Friends in a shelter. That's kind of sad. You know, when we try really hard to match the right animals with the right people, because sometimes, you know, a really young, energetic dog is really, really cute and somebody wants it, but the person who wants it is a couch potato, and that dog is going to be not happy, and the person's not going to be happy because the dog's going to be, you know, trying to go do something all the time, and the person's going to want to sit and watch TV. And so we spend a lot of time trying to do the right adoptions so that everybody's happy, because, you know, we know that if the people aren't happy, the animal's probably not going to be happy, and vice versa. You know, I say our claim to fame is that we reduced the euthanasia rate from 68% to less than 1%. And we've probably saved the lives of about 28,000 animals since we've been doing this. So that's quite a few. We also help animals in the community. Like sometimes someone will call us and say, you know, my dog needs surgery, or my cat, I really don't have enough money to pay for it. Can you help me? So we help those people. And we also get about 2,000 animals spayed and neutered in our community every year, because one way to keep the population down at the shelter is to, you know, prevent the animals from having litters in the first place. And a lot of people that aren't spaying and neutering, you know, they get their animals have litters and then they want to dump them on us. And like last year we had 456 kittens, little bitty ones. Yeah, I know you're raising your eyebrows. That's completely overwhelming. And we get people that will foster them when they're really little, and sometimes we get little kittens that are like, 2 days old, and there's no mother cat, so somebody has to bottle feed them. So we have this pit bull that was picked up as a stray animal, and he was probably a year and a half old. And so one day a lady came in and she wanted to adopt a pit bull, but she said, the pit bull I adopt has to get along with my brother's pit bull because he lives with me. So these two dogs got along. So she took the dog, and about 3 months after she had him, she came in one day and she said, I wanted to tell you about your dog. I thought, oh dear, what is she going to tell me? So she said, well, when I first got him, about the first week, he would, he'd start barking at me, and I was a little bit afraid because he's a big pit bull and I didn't know what he was doing. She said, but I figured out about the third time he did that about 10 minutes before I had a seizure, he was telling me, you're going to have a seizure. And, when people adopt animals from us, we don't ask them for a full health report. We didn't know this woman had seizures. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered even if we had, but, we didn't know. So she said she realized that every single time he did that, she was about to have a seizure. So she talked to her doctor, and her doctor said, well, there is some medication that you could take, but up until now, you've never known when you were going to have a seizure until you actually had it. So you need to take this about 10 minutes before you have a seizure. So she did. Then, a little bit more time, and he would put his head in her lap and whine. She thought, well, now what's he doing? Why is he doing that? So she figured out that I guess she was diabetic, and when her blood sugar would start going down, he would put his head in her lap and start whining. And she said, it's restored my life. She said, I have a 6-year-old son, and she goes, I'd gotten to the point where I didn't even like to go to the grocery store because, what do you do when you're 6 years old and your mother has a seizure at the grocery store? That's a big burden for a 6-year-old to try to deal with. So she said, now that I have the dog, I'm just like, I feel like a normal human being again. I can do stuff. And then I started looking, and I realized that those dogs, which are hardly ever pit bulls, they're usually labs or something, can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000. And she got this one at the shelter for $131. And I thought, he couldn't have been trained. These had to be natural instincts, because if anyone had lost a dog that valuable that they'd trained, they would have come looking for him. They wouldn't have just, because he was picked up as a stray and nobody ever came to look for him. So isn't that a pretty fascinating story? When I first started doing this, people used to say to me, Cheryl, who do you think's going to adopt that old cat or that old dog or that crazy animal or this or that? And I go, on this planet, there's several billion people, and I only have to find one. I have to find one person who wants this animal. That's all I have to find. And I've never not been able to find them, always. Like I said, I worked for Apple Computer. That was my last job before this, and there were a lot of interesting things going on there too, of course. But I guess ultimately, I'm not a technologist, and I just find beings more interesting than things. And whether those beings are people or horses or cows or dogs, cats, I just find them all really interesting.
Come on down and see Sammie's friends. Could be your life they're saving the end. For adoption information, call 471-5041. That's 471-5041.